we were driving a little lost around campus and we were saying how beautiful it is, how lucky you guys are to be able to study and look out at the mountains. So thank you so much for having us. I'm Gardner. I am the manager of events and outreach at Code 2040. Before that, I was a diversity recruiter for Freshmen Engineering Practicum for a year. And before that, I worked at my college, Pomona College down in Claremont, California, outside of LA, for 2 years in admissions and in the career development office during internships. So that when we talk later about some of the tips and tricks, you'll know that I'm not just doing it because it's what I read, it's because it's what I've done in the past and helping people get internships and hire people at big tech companies. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to let Shola introduce herself, and then we're going to make a short video about our program and talk a little bit about what we do at Code 2040.
Hi, my name is Shola Oyedele. I was a fellow last year, so 2013. I'm a current senior at Stanford, graduating in the spring. I interned at Docmunch this past summer. Working in computer science, I also minored in African American studies, and so diversity and including the two things I'm passionate about.
Okay, we're going to show you a short video.
Our flagship program is a summer fellowship that brings top performing computer science students together for the summer. We set them up with internships with top tech companies.
I couldn't have imagined a better experience than the one I got at Gardner. The product that I had over the weekend, I have complete ownership of it.
And then we do a leadership development curriculum and evenings and weekends.
Here, I was able to talk to entrepreneurs and founders, people who have been through it all.
Charles, I said, I was able to make a couple of intros for me at other companies.
I really want to get involved in bringing other people into this tech world.
Code 2040 has changed my life, so I'm excited for where I go from here, and I'm happy that I have to be home.
Thanks for watching. Did anyone catch in the video montage someone who you probably interact with his products every day? Anyone catch him? Jack Dorsey, who founder of Twitter and Square. So we got to meet Jack Dorsey on a company crawl. So we went to Uber, Twitter, Jawbone, which makes the Jambox, and the fourth one was Uber, Square. And the fourth really cool one. But anyway, so the students get to do really cool events like that over the summer. We also get to do, we also set up students with an internship over the summer. So Shola worked at Docmunch. We have a lot of companies, big and small. So Facebook was our largest company, and one of our smaller companies only had 3 people at it. So students can choose from a variety of companies and projects. So our fellows get matched through our process, which I'll explain in a moment. And they do their internship 40 hours a week for at least 10 weeks, because our program is 10 weeks long. And during that time, you'll not only have your paid internship, you'll also be doing some entrepreneurial training along with your internship. So from June to August, and those entrepreneurial pieces are things like the speaker series. So one of the shots is of Tracy Chow, who is one of the first engineers at Quora, and now she's at Pinterest. And then along with her was a venture capitalist, Mike Abbott, who is at Kleiner Perkins. So people that you get to meet over the summer are really influential, have had a lot of experience on the engineering side and also on the business side, so founding their own companies, failing at it, succeeding at it, and kind of teaching you what to do and what not to do. So maybe Shola can talk a little bit about maybe your favorite workshop and your favorite speaker that they had this year.
So I think my favorite workshop this past summer would probably be this whiteboarding interview session we did at Facebook. So we went to Facebook, they took us in this big room, they had a lot of whiteboards and several of their engineers, and they basically taught us how to interview. And I've been in coding interviews before, I had to go through one to get into Code 2040, but it was a little different being there with a software engineer, someone who was a veteran, to actually tell you, here's not how to just get through your interview or survive it, here's how you master it, here's how you really impress someone, here are the things that people mess up on, these are the things that you should be going for. And so that, I think, for me was a big learning opportunity. Another cool one was the Bloomsburg interview workshop we did. So teaching how to interview and public speak and having that, I guess, interaction and experience is probably one of my favorites. Favorite speaker actually had to be Tristan Walker. So he founded Code 2040, but he actually came and spoke with us from his entrepreneurship perspective. And so his talk was just about entrepreneurship, and it was actually right before he just released his product. So just having the opportunity to speak with him one-on-one as he was going through the process of not only starting Code 2040, but going on to his next venture, and what it means to really have a product or an idea and go forth with it, and even have people not necessarily believe you, or not necessarily have the support you want, and continue to go for it. And so I think being in the program that he started, Code 2040, then seeing him about to do something else as well, and kind of being inspired by his story is probably one of my favorites.
So, as I mentioned, you get paid over the summer. So, the average engineer gets paid about $77,000 a year. So, we expect our interns to get paid at least $1,000 a week for those 10 weeks. Some students have their internship start before our program or end after or both. And then a lot of the companies that you would be working for give you free lunch, dinner, breakfast. They have laundry rooms at the place, typical kind of startup tech perks that you would expect from the company. So also, you all wouldn't have to worry about this because you live here, but we also would help with flights and housing. So who's eligible for our program? Candidates must self-identify as Black or Latino, attend a U.S. college or university, be an undergraduate or graduate student. So that's important to us that that you can be from community college up through PhD students. So last year we actually had 3 freshmen in our class. One of them is Randy, who you saw at the very end of the film, and she worked at Jawbone, and she built their entire careers page. So if you want to get a job at Jawbone, you have to go through the site she built. And she had never actually touched web development before she started. So I think what's cool about the program is that we do kind of a baseline assessment of technical skills, and then that gives us something to look at as far as knowing that you can be thrown into a new company or a new environment and learn something from scratch. Shola, I believe you had to learn some new things. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Okay. So during my summer, actually, a lot of the fellows had one project that they worked on for the entire 10 weeks. I actually had a series of mini projects. And so I started in with web development. I did a little bit of the web responsive design and changing it so that it was responsive to whatever medium it was on. Part of the new aspect that I worked on was testing. And so I'd done maybe unit tests or just testing a specific function that I wrote, but I never created a series of tests such that whenever you have a website or any program, you have to test it before you make it live, just so that you basically don't break anything. So when anyone launches a new product and Facebook rolls out something, they've tested it heavily to make sure that it always passes. And so I was working for a new startup, Docmunch, that had none of their test suite built out. And so part of my job was actually building out this testing suite and functions such that every time they released a new product, it would roll through a series of a lot of code to just make sure that it worked and that nothing would file. Part of it is kind of a security thing. And so for me, I had never really done testing on that large of a scale. Testing for me was like maybe 3 lines of code or something small. but doing it for a program or product, being part of something a little bit bigger, and something that I know will still be using their code base was kind of a cool experience.
So to apply, it's an online application. Our final deadline is this Sunday, so if you're interested in applying, it's all online and you can go in and out of the application. You don't have to sit there and do it all in one batch, but you have 6 days to fill it out. And in that application, we ask you about your background. So we ask you about previous jobs, other experience that you've had, some short answer questions about why you want to be a fellow, why it's important for you to be a part of this organization and this group of people. And then we ask you some coding problems and samples. So the application is language agnostic, so you can code in whatever language you feel most comfortable in, as long as you present clean code. That's really what we're looking for. And don't worry, I don't grade it, I'm not an engineer. It's someone who's at one of our partner companies, so places like the Facebook, Google, Twitter, are people who are actually creating the coding pieces.
So I guess, yeah, this year I kind of had the cool opportunity to grade some of the non-technical aspect of the application. I guess I would just say overall, the best applications I have read have been the people who've been really passionate about what they want to do, passionate about diversity, also just passionate about technology, passionate about being in this space. And you guys already have a leg up because you're here. But there's a difference being in California. Being at Stanford, I also was here for quite some time, and then actually being in Silicon Valley and being able to have a lunch meeting with the CEO of this company, or seeing Jack Dorsey in person. I tweet all the time. So actually seeing the person and talking to the person who created it, and being in an environment where everyone wants to help. Being a fellow, you'll meet so many people who really want to help you. And being in that space where you'll have the CEO or just a lot of people who are willing to take lunch with you or talk with you or give you advice and put you in an environment to help you, I think that's a great thing. So application-wise, I would suggest put a little bit of time into it, but just be honest and say what you're passionate about, because most times your readers can see that and they appreciate it.
Yeah, so after the alma application, we do a phone screen. So you are on the phone with someone on our staff, and you talk to us a little bit more about your background and what you're interested in. And it really gives us an idea, just like any company would, to kind of assess your cultural fit into our cohort. So you'll never be in a room during the program of more than 20 people, you know, when you're going to see a speaker, going to do a workshop. So it's a really intimate space, so it's really important that everyone who's a fellow kind of gets along and, you know, has constructive criticism for each other, but also kind of fits in and eventually we'll start businesses together. It's kind of the idea that it's not just about the summer, but for a lifetime that you'll be around these people and have them as a resource. The next part, go back, is company matching. So after you pass the phone screen, we think that you would be really awesome in the program and that companies will love you as much as we do. We send you to companies and you do their interview process. So usually that's a non-technical screen, so again, culture fit, and then a technical screen, so some kind of coding with them. And then if they give you an offer and you accept, you become a fellow like Carlos. It's awesome. So Shola touched on these things. I just want to reiterate the 3 main buckets that we look at when we evaluate an application. So coding ability, again, we're talking about foundational things. So we're not looking for anyone who codes in any particular language, but that you have a foundation to be able to have an internship for the summer and contribute to a mission critical project. As I mentioned, Randy's project of building a whole career site, Shola's project of doing testing. Students are doing things that companies use after they leave, and that's what we look for when we look at job descriptions. And so when we're looking at your code, we want to know, can I put the student at a job one at a Docmunch, and they can do these big projects for their companies. Passion for engineering and innovation, Shola touched on that, and then leadership and initiative. So whether that's in technology or outside of technology, the entrepreneurship piece is really important to us. Only 1% of venture capital-backed founders are African American, and less than 1% are Latino. So it's not just about getting great coders into the high-tech space, but also building leaders who can found their own companies and start their own businesses. Shola's going to talk a little bit about her history as far as getting into coding and becoming a fellow. Before she does that, I want to open it up to questions about the program itself. So I'm going to have questions or concerns or thoughts, ideas. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
What, I'm not sure if I missed it or not, but what is the symbolism of Code 2040?
Great question. So what is 2040? So 2040 is a year that majority of the country will be minority. So by that time, 42% of the US will be Black and Latino. So by that time, we as an organization hope that there's some parity in technology so that the people who are actually building the products reflect the people who are buying and using them.
Can you talk about your small team and the team that works at 2040 and I'm curious how many of you would fall under the demographic that you serve? Because I don't know if you all do. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so none of us are engineers, so
I knew
sorry.
that.
But we have amazing relationships with all these really amazing engineers who tell us about the engineering pieces and help guide us there. So there are actually 7 people on our team. This time last year, we had just become 3 people. So we've more than doubled our size in a year. This is our 2nd year of existence. We just had our anniversary on the 1st. And this will be our 3rd class of students. So about our staff, our director went to Stanford and she has a JD and an MBA from there, and she has her BA from Harvard. And she was in the entrepreneurial space right after Stanford. Tristan, who's a co-founder and now the chairman of our board, also went to Harvard and got his MBA with Laura. And he went to SUNY Stony Brook in New York for undergrad. And then Amy, Jonathan, Bianca are all kind of education focused and tech focused in their backgrounds. I'm not sure how deep you want me to go. We have an operations person. But yeah, we do, as far as like ethnicity, is that what you were getting at? For as far as reflecting
I was just
our
curious some of the
population.
backgrounds. I mean, you specifically serve Latino and Black students, and how many of you guys are in that demographic as well?
Of 7, 6 of us.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Any other questions about the program?
How much of the product innovation will be considered proprietary by the interns?
So how much of what you do at your job is owned by the company? Is that your question? So most of the time it's 100% the company. I know that question comes up a lot for PhD students, so that's something that you work out with the company itself when you sign your NDAs and all that.
Okay.
But most companies, what you do there stays there. Especially if you're coding on their laptop that they give you. If you code on your own laptop while you're employed by them, not using their code base, it's usually more flexible.
I have one last question,
Yeah.
sorry. Do you, I'm trying to figure out the role here of Code 2040. Are you, I hate to use the word headhunters, but are you pretty much headhunters for young talent that are engineers and?
I wouldn't call us headhunters, but what headhunters do and what we do functionally is very similar. We are a nonprofit, so yeah. We do, the goal is to increase the number of Black and Latino students who are in high tech. So a lot of minorities tend to be at larger non-technical companies doing technical work. So this is moving towards the innovation space as opposed to just a technical job itself.
Okay.
And this is only served to minorities, Black and Latino, so.
That is correct. All our students must identify. We don't publicize this, but if you're Native American, you also would qualify, but the percentage of Native Americans in tech is extremely low. So we will look at it, but we don't have task. to us and said is women. It's also really important, so the number of women in technology is quite low. So Shola is a great example of a female in technology, but that's also really important to us. We want our class to be 50% women this next summer. So out of 40 students, we want to have 20 of them be women. Yeah.
So would you make an exception for a woman who does not identify as minority?
At this time, no. Yeah. So you have to be women. Cool. So if there are more questions about the program itself, and we will be here afterwards to answer questions. So yeah.
And maybe you'll get to this later, but are there things about how people apply for the internships that you're a part of that are numerously as well as all internships in the tech space?
Yeah, definitely. So after Shola talks about her stuff, we're going to talk about our applicant toolkit, which is specifically built to help you apply to any internship in technology.
So, hi guys. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience this past summer. I was, I guess, ending my junior year, coming into Post 2040, and I had worked at the FCC, so I actually worked for the government, Federal Communications Commission in technology with the chief technologist, and I had previously also worked at Stanford at research, so I'd actually worked in non-technical spaces as in tech, so as the engineer or maybe on the IT team, but I'd actually never worked for a tech company. One of the things that I found extremely difficult was finding a company that was open for minorities or something that was a little bit, that would give me a comfortable space, or even just getting an interview, finding the right fit. I found that Post 2040, being a part of the program, getting accepted, applying to their partner companies, all of which do support diversity, support women, support minorities. I found that to personally be really helpful to me. I think the biggest things that I've gained from Post 2040 was the networking. Being in California, you have the opportunity to apply for a job at Google, apply for a job at Facebook, or work at a technical company. But it's really hard to network and actually meet the people who could really help you. You have mentors who can guide you and say, this class you're picking up, or this trajectory, or this major, or here's what you need to learn. A prime example of that is actually in school. When I started working in terminal, it took me forever to figure out how to just navigate, how to navigate terminal at all. And it took me months at school at Stanford, and I could not get it at all. And I actually went to my internship, and it was 2 days, and I was sitting next to the CTO of my company, because it was a small company, a startup, that Post 2040 helped me place me, and he said, you're moving really slow. Have you tried them? Why don't you Google this? Go to this website. This will actually teach you how to use it. And then in 5 minutes, I had learned them. And I was able to navigate terminal so much more quickly. This was something that it took me months to try to figure out at Stanford, and I got no help from it. And then in 5 minutes at my internship, seeing one of the leading engineers say to me, hey, do this. This is where you go. Go to this website or go to these resources. And I think that's a little bit what Bianca was talking about. Iris was talking about in terms of the application toolkit, because they kind of note those things. Using Github, using certain websites will actually help you prepare you, make you a better candidate. These are a lot of the things that I think I got the most benefit from Code 2040. The networking, the opportunity, the internship. I progressed so much technically from my internship, and learning, sitting next to someone who was far more advanced, who, as you saw me making mistakes or doing something, taking longer than it should have, being able to correct it on the spot every single time that happened. I progressed so much further than I was, coding in my dorm room, taking a lot longer than I should have. So I think, as an alumni, networking, the environment, technically the environment, but also culturally the environment. I think also the people that you're with. I had, at Stanford, had the opportunity to be around other minorities, but none of them were in tech, or other people in technology, who most of which weren't minority or weren't women. Being able to actually have both at the same time, have people who are interested and doing kind of the fun thing, going hiking, going biking, but also talking about coding at the same time, and doing a lot of the things that I find my different areas or groups of people and friends weren't necessarily interested in. And so I think as an alumni, the people you'll be surrounded with, the fellows, you'll get to know, the companies and the connections you'll make at your company, but then also at other companies, I think is one of the best things. And so even though each person is paired up with their company, because as fellows, we're all together every time, you do actually get to meet engineers from other companies. And so although I worked at Docmunch, I actually got to meet a lot of people from Jawbone. So I actually ended up doing a co-op this fall. A lot of that was meeting and being able to be around the right people during Code 2040 to get that second internship. Yeah, alumni-wise, I think Code 2040 is a great opportunity. I think if you're looking for networking, if you're really looking to become an entrepreneur, start your own company or product, and learn from the people who have done it the right way in the Valley, be around like-minded people, people who are going to propel you forward and go where you want to go and make the connections at companies that you will hopefully want to work for. I think this is the place to be. I think not only can you learn from mentors, learning from the staff, but you can also learn from the engineers that surround you. So whether it's working at your company or maybe it's even academia, I think this is the place for you. Just in general. So each fellow actually gets paired with two mentors, one technical and one non-technical. So one of my mentors, technical, her name is Emoji Miller. She's a PhD in CS at Berkeley. And so here, my time at Stanford, I can count 3 black females in the CS major. And so being in Code 2040 and actually having a black female as my mentor PhD candidate, who's actually finishing her PhD this year, was kind of a big thing. She was Nigerian and I'm also Nigerian, which was also kind of like an awkward coincidence. And it was kind of really cool to have. But I've always felt was really passionate and just very encouraging to me as a mentor. She would I think the first time I sat down with her, she was just like, so tell me your life story. Where do you want to go? And I remember laughing, thinking, who is this person? She's a little crazy. But the amount of guidance that she's given me and the direction that she's taken me, and even now, I actually ran into her at our anniversary party. I didn't talk with her because I've been busy with school for I think the past month. And she goes to me and says, have you thought about where you want to apply to work? Where you want to go for a job? And she was actually strategizing with me. Here's where you should work. Make sure you call me so that we can continue interviewing together. And the first time I met her was probably about 6 months ago. And so the fact that she's here making my life or my trajectory kind of her mission and her responsibility and making sure that I have the work that she needs. I remember telling her, I'm a little worried because I haven't coded in C++ in a while. That's what my interview's in. She said, I taught C++. Let me help you. And so I think those are the people, those will be your mentors in Code 2040. And I think having people like that, having direct relationships with those people and building out and continuing to do so after Code 2040. Even now, there's actually a webinar that we have tonight for our alumni, helping those in entrepreneurship, helping those people who are interested in being a thought leader. I think thinking of those things, increasing your online presence, making these connections, that's what Code 2040 is about. And if you can, I encourage you to apply.
Any questions for Shola before we talk about the toolkit and how to apply against that internship? Okay, so our applicant toolkit is actually, that's one of the URLs, but it's along with the application. So while you're in the app, you can actually go back and forth to the toolkit. So the reason why we built the applicant toolkit is last year we had hundreds of applications, but not everyone was passing our coding exam, or not everyone had an online profile, not everyone was doing projects outside of class. So doing the things that we expect as an organization, but also the companies we send you to expect you to have on your resume. Now everyone was doing that. And so for us, like I was saying before, we really want to increase the number of minorities in tech and we can't do that just with our program, we have to do it in other ways too. So we built this online toolkit that has a lot of resources for you to go to when you're thinking about applying for an internship. So the first part is Code. So Code Academy is an online platform paired up with us, and they gave us a track of different coding segments that they feel is really important to having a technical foundation. So that's not the only thing you should know, obviously, but it's an example of some things that you should have a background in. And then projects, online profile, resume, cover letter, and interview are also a part of the applicant toolkit that can all get you an internship at a top tech company. So I'm going to go into each of them in detail and kind of give you some highlights about what each piece entails and what you should have as part of your materials. So we can go past the code. We just talked about code. So projects. So Shola mentioned this, getting your code up on GitHub. What was the other one you mentioned?
This is the one
Yeah, so putting your code out there. So actually a lot of recruiters will go to GitHub and search for talent on GitHub. So there are a lot of people that we met with over the summer that are like, oh yeah, I got found on GitHub, or I found this person on GitHub. So getting your code up there is really smart, and where a lot of people will look. And we also look at it, so when we're reviewing your application, if you have something on GitHub, put it in your profile and look at it. So you can get projects outside of class, so that's what's really important. So they want to see a tech company's initiative. So whether it's you coding on your own or going to hackathons, there's a lot of hackathons. There's 3 I know of this weekend in the North Bay. So if you want to get a job in a tech company, you have to do things outside of class. It can't just be your classroom work. As awesome as those pieces are, you need to have something, else on your resume.
And if you really don't have time to do those projects, because I didn't have any extra projects, look through your classwork and just figure out which of the projects that which have been like the most complex that I've done, and either not necessarily redo it or expand on it. Expand on it and show people why you're interested. Another thing that my mentor taught me is if you're really wanting to learn or load up your GitHub, get a series of algorithms, things that you've learned, and code up each one. Just as a practice, and as an extra level, if you're either into gaming or anything visual, make them visual. So those are just like extra little things that employers look at, and they do like, particularly the algorithm one, just because it shows that you have span and width. And so if they're able to see on GitHub that you already know these and you already know how to do it, a lot of times they respond very well to that. And so classwork and algorithms is a big thing if you can do that on the side, but take what you've already done and definitely make sure that people can see that, at least at a base level.
Thanks. So you got engineering. Okay, so online profiles. So who in here has a LinkedIn account? Okay, if I come back in a year, I want 100% of you raising your hand. So kudos to everyone who has a LinkedIn account. So the easiest way to describe it is your professional network online. So let's say that I wanted to have a job at any company in the world, Google. I'll actually use that example. So if I wanted to go back to Google, I could go into my LinkedIn account and say, I want to also have a job that has this title. LinkedIn will give me all the people who match that description, who I know, or who know those people that I know. So then all I have to do is go to my friend and say, hey, I want to get a job doing what you're doing this at Google, can you help me out and tell me what I need to know? So everyone knows it's about who you know, so LinkedIn makes it really easy for you to have all of that information in one place online that's searchable, and it makes life really awesome. And when you start going to networking events and stuff like that, a lot of people will say, oh, are you on LinkedIn? You say yes, and they have your whole entire resume basically online. Also a place where you can link any projects that you have, websites you have, you can link back to your GitHub account. It's really comprehensive, and you can kind of mold it to what you want the world to know about you professionally. So it's really important that you have an online presence if you're going to use technology. So if you have a Twitter account, it's important that if it's public, or a Facebook account, anything social, that it's professional, because when you apply to us, we'll go Facebook you, or we'll look for you, we'll just Google you and we'll say, ooh, this person has some unprofessional stuff. I don't know if I want to put them in front of Facebook, even though they have bad Facebook. It gives us a sense of comfort because our reputation is on the line. If we put you in front of someone and they Google you and they don't see something professional, it also puts your reputation on the line. So just being really conscious about what's public and what's out there because it doesn't go away ever. So just, was that, I thought it was clapping. Yeah, so just really thinking about getting your professional face out there and making sure that everything is cohesive and technical. So again, putting those projects up there on LinkedIn.
I would also say that because there's such a shortage of people in CS or people in technology in general, companies are typically heavily recruiting through LinkedIn and GitHub. They recruit through both, but you'll see more engineers recruiting through GitHub, and you'll see the more non-technical, so the HR and the recruiting teams using LinkedIn. So it's actually really important for you to have a robust LinkedIn, putting, again, all the projects you've done or the things you contributed to. Question?
Yeah, what was the first one you mentioned on LinkedIn?
GitHub, so GITHUB. Okay, yeah. So it's basically the same thing as LinkedIn. It's more so if you're coding on your computer, you can commit or basically save your work online on GitHub, and anyone who goes to your profile can see it. So they can see the things that you've coded. So it's useful if you're doing it for school because then they can see basically the things you're coding. They can tell that you've coded, you've committed a lot, and you kind of get that extra credit. It's not necessarily mandatory, but companies like seeing it. If they see that you're coding every day or you can, I guess, code a lot of lines, typically they'll say, this is someone that I want in my company or this is someone with potential. They'll want to interview you at the very least.
I was just asking her if she does open source code, so you can do it on GitHub or other places to do it, but contributing to someone else's project. So if you have an expertise in one area and they're looking for someone like that, contributing to their project, even though it's not yours, you're still coding for another project. Okay, so the next piece is your resume. So I have probably looked at thousands of resumes at this point, having done the jobs I've done, and I will tell you a couple of things that may or may not shock you. One, I probably spent at Google, I'll say this is recorded, at Pomona, I'll say, I probably spent 30 seconds on a resume when I was looking to place people in internships. So 30 seconds is a very short amount of time to look at your entire life's work, right? So some things to help a recruiter or someone looking at your resume see the most important things is to put them towards the top, because when you read from top to bottom, left to right. So making sure that the most important things are at the top of your resume sounds like a silly, easy thing to do, but it's incredibly important. Also, keeping it to one page, again, because I'm not going to spend a ton of time looking at it. You want to make sure that you're giving someone as much information as possible, but doing it in a short amount of time. So being brief but deep. So your resume should really highlight the things that are relevant to that job. Your resume should not be the same. If you send it to 5 companies, each of those should look different. They can look very similar, they should look different. So usually what I'll do, if I'm creating a resume or helping someone do a resume, I'll look at the job description and I'll highlight the things that relate to me as in like words. So literally I'll take a marker, I'll print it out, and I'll highlight the words that relate to things I've done. And then I'll take out the words in my base resume and replace them with the words I've highlighted. Why do we do that? So if I have a job description in my head and I'm a recruiter, I'm thinking in the way that we think at my organization, not in the way you think, right? So you're going to take my language and throw it back at me, so I'm like, oh, this person meets all 10 of my criteria because they have these exact words that were in my job description. So you don't want to have the exact lines, right? You want to have some key words that are in their job description on your resume. So that pops out at them, you're speaking their language, and they can see their job description on your resume. So those are kind of my top tips, most important things at the top, and make sure they relate to the job you actually want to get at a specific company, because they're looking for the way they think, not necessarily the experience of
One thing I generally do is I actually just keep a list, kind of a master list of everything I've done, everything that's significant, just in one master list. And when I'm applying for a job, I'll take out the things that aren't relevant. So every time I volunteer somewhere, or I'm just working either service or maybe it's a side project that I've done that I want to list, any programs or internships, I have it all listed in one document. And then when I'm applying somewhere, I figure out which are the opportunities that best speak to what this job is. Because one of the things I found that a lot of people make this mistake is when you have one resume and you're applying to it, sometimes you may forget that time you volunteered or that experience you had that it's actually important for this one job here. So maybe with Code 2040, a lot of your technical experiences are important. But if you've interned or if you've worked with minorities, if you are the president of your Women in Computer Science Club or something that you're really passionate about, we do care about those things. We care about leadership. We care about thought leaders and entrepreneurship. Those are things that you also want to highlight. I think people forget them when they're extracurriculars or something that you do on the side or do occasionally. So by kind of having a master list of things that, oh, this is the things I've done or accomplished, researched or wrote about, it makes you a little bit, it forces you to actually check and make sure, are these the things that I want to portray, and these are things that are relevant to here.
So something that goes hand in hand with your resume is a cover letter. So these can be a little painful, right? If you've ever written one, and what do I say about myself? How do I say how crazy I am about this company, how much I want to work for them? So a big mistake that most people make is they repeat their resume. So why would I spend 30 seconds looking at your resume and then 30 more seconds looking at your resume again, just in paragraph form? So you want to make sure that you're highlighting things on your resume and explaining them. So you only have, a sentence for each item on your resume. So you get your top 3 things you really want them to know about you based on their job description. So say they want a leader, they want someone who's passionate, and they want a great technologist. So those are the 3 things you want to talk about. You don't want to just take your resume and repeat it. You want to take those 3 things and find examples on how you actually executed those things and your results on those things, and talk about it in your cover letter. You don't have to repeat everything in the way that your resume does. Your resume is like a full picture, and your cover letter is your highlights. So the other piece is you kind of want to brown nose. You want to tell the company how awesome they are and how much you know about them. Going back to the culture fit, a lot of companies are looking for a particular type of person to join their organization. Not that they won't deviate from that, but if you look on their website and you see they use the word family, put that in your cover letter. I really want to join the Code 2040 family. If they use the word team, say team. So really getting to know the organization, especially at these small companies where, how many people were at Docmunch?
I was the third.
You were the 3rd person, oh, so you were the smallest company. So if you're the 3rd person, it really matters who you are as an individual, and it really matters that you like and know what the heck they do. So a lot of times people just have the same cover letter for everyone. What a huge mistake, because there are companies, from the company's perspective, they are different than every other company out there. No matter how it is perceived by the outside, they are unique, and so you have to identify their uniqueness. Shola has an example.
So I had a quick example with the whole cover letter. One of the things I noticed over the summer with Square is if you look at their website, they talk a little bit about open source. They really like the people they hire to have extra side projects. And if you really look at a job description, the next time you're interviewing for a company, one of the things you want to see is what are the recurring themes? What are the things that they say they really like about someone? Even if you don't have it, it's very easy or very quick. Even if it's not very much, a lot of people really like effort. They really want to see that in somewhat of your spare time, you could either contribute to what you're really passionate about, which is either entrepreneurship, or maybe you spent 5 minutes putting up 6 lines that you thought were contributing to someone else's code. Those are the kind of things that if you read through someone's job description or a company and figure out what's that thing that they keep talking about, when there's family, maybe that's the thing I should lean towards. Or maybe kind of like Square's open source, and realize, oh, that's something, maybe I should do a little bit of that. It makes it a lot easier when you're going through the process. And a lot of times when they see things like that, companies stick to it and they say, I like this person. And that's kind of the feeling you want. That's usually how the person gets the job.
So I like to equate it to online dating. So if you look at someone's, oh, I just got some heads pulled up, nice. So if you're looking at someone's profile and you want to email them, you don't just say like, hey, how you doing? You say like, oh, I love that you love basketball. Like, I'm a huge Nuggets fan. Let's go to the Warriors game together. Like, that's how you need to approach a job. Because, again, they're a unique entity, and they want to know that you know about them. They don't want to think, oh, they just copy and pasted this resume and cover letter and sent it over. They really want to know that you've done your research and you know about them, because they see themselves as individual people and as individual entities that are individual. Okay, so the last piece of the toolkit is your interview. So I am not going to talk too much about this. I'll leave it to Shola because she's actually done interviews for engineering.
So if you kind of pass the first round of the interview of the application, you then have a phone interview, and then you have actual interviews, which will sometimes be phone and then in person, or just in person with your host company or a company you want to be your host company or the person you work with over the summer. And so interviewing prep, the one thing I would say is you should get a book. It's called Programming Interviews Exposed. It's really good, particularly for Google. A lot of people who've gotten into Google and work there, their engineers recommend it. So coding exam, that's kind of the book to read. In general, I would look at the application toolkit. One of the things I would recommend for the phone interview is sometimes it can be a bit cumbersome to talk on the phone and then also kind of code simultaneously. That's one of those things that you really have to practice because it feels so foreign when you do it. I still actually really don't like phone coding interviews. Just because they can be a bit weird. But I guess I'll kind of explain it just in case you're not familiar with the different types of interviews that they'll do. So when you're applying for a company the first time, they'll interview you. They'll just want to talk with you and find your background, what you're interested in, what languages you like to code in, what projects you like working on, whether you like web versus backend, or etc. The second interview, phone interview, is typically you'll sit on the phone with an engineer and they'll talk to you. You'll want to talk through the process of a piece of code or an algorithm or something you're working on. So they'll give you a problem and they'll say, how would you solve this? And so you just talk through it on the phone. And then step by step, you'll be coding pieces of it. You may have one or two, maybe more if it's a full job, phone interviews, and then you'll have on site, which is the same thing, except over the phone, you're on a whiteboard. And so I think Programming Interviews Exposed, it's a great book. You should definitely go look at it. It's probably the best book for programming interviews. I think in general, the biggest thing is just kind of staying calm, making sure you talk through it. Always at the end of an interview, at the end of solving a problem, look over the problem, make sure that it works, whether it's taking an example and actually looking through it, making sure that everything looks right, or maybe even making a suggestion for how you can improve the function. A lot of times it's not necessary that you do it, but most times companies respond well to it, and even if you've gotten the problem wrong, if you do those steps, oftentimes they'll help you, they'll suggest a right way to do it, or many times you get positive remarks from it. So those are the things I would recommend.
I think in any interview, it's safe to ask questions. So if you don't understand something that they said, or you kind of have an idea but you're not sure, it's better to ask the question up front than to start off doing it under the wrong assumptions. So it's really important that if you don't understand something, to ask them a question.
Yeah. So same thing with what Iris was saying. If you ever if you're ever stuck and you need some help, just ask. Many times it'll lead you in the right direction. Another thing that's really bad in any type of coding interview is just silence. Because the engineer you're working with doesn't know what you're thinking. And really the whole purpose of the interview is they just want to see what comes to mind. They want to see whether you're thinking brute force or maybe can I make this in constant time or just different. They just want to know kind of how are you approaching the problem. So sometimes the solution is really not as important as just how you get there. So making sure that you're always talking through it, whether it's saying verbally, I'm not sure how to do this, but I think I'm going to start with brute force, or I just want to start with an iterative solution is always the way to go.
Yeah, so that's the interview piece of the technical workshop. So that's our main email address, and then the toolkit and the application sites. Please follow us on Twitter Twitter and Facebook. I do manage both of those, so you're talking to me when you tweet at us, I'm the person who responds. I do want to open it up to questions about the toolkit, and then, or about the program in general. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Regardless of whether you're minority or woman, I suggest everyone look at the toolkit. It's really robust, and it was made for the very reason of a lot of people failed last year. A lot of people didn't pass the coding exam. They didn't understand what tech companies were looking for. And so that toolkit, regardless of whether or not you want to apply to Code 2040, that's what you should look at right before you interview with wherever you're applying. So I recommend it.
Any questions?
I would say here, the biggest obstacle that you can overcome, sort of getting to where you are today.
The biggest obstacle would actually be getting an internship in tech, and getting an internship that would propel me forward. To be honest, I think a lot of times, well, I get very often, you're a great candidate, but I don't think you're a culture fit for where we are. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. A lot of different reasons for it. And I think just kind of getting the resources you need to kind of get out there and just improve technically. I think that's the biggest obstacle over here. And just also being comfortable in the space. I think a lot more comfortable later after the summer.
So thank you all for